Hey, what's up? Nick here. You're listening to Nick's Rants. Today I'm going to take things a little bit more seriously. I got a story here called Goodbye Middle Class. 51% of all American workers make less than $30,000 a year. It says here, we just got more evidence that the middle class in America is dying. According to brand new numbers that were just released by the Social Security Administration, 51% of all workers in the United States make less than $30,000 a year. Let that number sink in for a moment. You cannot support a middle-class family today on $2,500 a month, especially after taxes are taken out. And yet more than half of all workers in this country make less than that each month. In order to have a thriving middle class, we've got to have an economy that produces lots of middle-class jobs, and that simply is not happening in America today. It says here, 38% of all American workers make less than $20,000 a year. 51% of all American workers made less than $30,000 last year. 62% of all American workers made less than $40,000, and 71% of all American workers made less than $50,000 a year. It says here, the first number is truly staggering. The federal poverty level for a family of 5 is $28,410, and yet almost 40% of all American workers do not even bring in $20,000 a year. And the rest of the story is not worth reading because it's just a bunch of garbage. Yeah, this is a serious issue. Just I don't know what it's like to be running a family because I'm only 19. Having a family I'm not even thinking about that at all. Nope. Not thinking about a family at the present moment. So part of the story doesn't really mean too much to me, but $30,000, that's $15 an hour full time, which is less than what a bookkeeper makes. Bookkeeper as in low-end accounting job. If you're single, $30,000 isn't that bad. Of course, I know this because I'm an accounting major. Anyways, I'm going to take you through the history of the middle class here. Alright, I'm just going to start at the 30s, just because I feel like it. In the 1930s, we have the Great Depression. Unemployment's at 25%. It's just horrible. People are going into soup kitchens to survive. It's just a complete mess. And then you have President Franklin Roosevelt stepping into office in 1933 and immediately enacts the New Deal. Well, actually the first thing he did was repeal the Prohibition, which helped out the people because it hurt the gangsters. And when you get crime down, it's much safer for the people, and you can have a thriving economy because everyone is safe. Anyways, the New Deal was just a massive spending bill. And brought about some major projects and feats of engineering. We have the Lincoln Tunnel. Was built in 1934 to 1936. Cost $85 million to build. And it says nearly 120,000 vehicles use this tunnel daily. One of the busiest tunnels in the world. And this next one, I think, is the biggest engineering feat of all of them. Because this stuff isn't even done today. Today. We have the Overseas Highway connecting Miami to Key West. This 127.5 mile long roadway was open for traffic in 1938. 127 miles over water in the 1930s. Massive feat in engineering. Like, we don't even do this today in 2015. Another feat of engineering here is the Hoover Dam from 1931 to 1936. that was being built. A lot of people died while making that. Lots of people died. Because that's before they had safety regulations. Anyways, that was a $165 million project. Which, by the way, they did under budget. And early. Well worth the building of that project, because the Hoover Dam produces a lot of electricity. A lot of electricity. 4.5 billion kilowatt hours, which provides power to 8 million people in the surrounding states. Anyways, then you had World War II, which there was a lot of spending going on in World War II. And you got the troops. They're getting paid. And then you have all the factory workers, which vast majority of them were women. That's the first time women got a large portion of the workforce. Because they needed somebody to build the bombs and the grenades and the guns and the tanks. That's back when all of the work was made in America. That's when Made in America was a big thing. That's one of the reasons why this middle class is falling apart. Anyways, and then we won the war, and 1950s we saw another boom in the middle class with the Eisenhower highway system. Thousands and thousands of miles of highway systems were built. Thousands of miles of electrical systems were built, because that's around the time where we interconnected the grid from just being small systems into this nationwide electrical system. And all that went to shit when Reagan came into the office. By committing treason, by the way, committing treason to get into office, Ronald Reagan, one of the things he did was he cut the top tax rate from somewhere in the 70% range down to 30 or 40%. Massive tax cut to the rich. And that caused some problems. Because by taxing the rich a high amount, the rich had their pay at a lower rate and then used the money that they would have spent on themselves to either reinvest in the company or pay their workers a living wage. It's one of the things that FDR said, that a company that makes its way by paying American workers less than a living wage does not have the right to be in existence in this country. And then by having those tax cuts, the rich just started taking in money, and then he fired those TSA workers. No, it wasn't TSA. Air traffic controllers. He fired the air traffic controllers, even though he didn't have the authority to do that. That's not what he does. And by doing that, that was basically creating a just all-out attack on the unions, and the unions just fell apart. Of course, unions did a lot of great stuff for us. I'm going to read down this list of things that labor unions have done. Weekends without work, breaks at work including your lunch breaks, paid vacation, family medical leave, sick leave, Social Security, minimum wage, Civil Rights Act, 8-hour workday, overtime pay, child labor laws, Occupational Safety and Health Act, 40-hour work week, workers' comp, unemployment insurance, pensions, workplace safety standards and regulations, employer health care insurance, collective bargaining rights for employees, wrongful termination laws, Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, whistleblower protection laws, Employer Polygraph Protection Act, Veterans Employment and Training Services, compensation increases and evaluation, sexual harassment laws, Americans with Disabilities Act, holiday pay, employer dental, life, and vision insurance, privacy rights, pregnancy and marital leave, military leave, the right to strike, public education for children, Equal Rights Act of 1963 and 2011, and ending sweatshops in the United States. All of these, every single one of these rules, regulations, and just overall changes were created by unions. Had everything to do with unions. They were proposed by unions, and they were successfully completed by unions. And that's not the only thing that completely threw apart our middle class. It's our trade deals. Our trade deals. A while back, we used to have tariffs, which is a import tax on goods that were being brought into the United States. Say someone ships in some steel. Well, they're going to have to pay a certain percent tax rate on that steel back when there were tariffs. And that was in place to protect American workers. Because there were countries in other parts of the world, like there are today, where people are paid less to do the same work. And by doing so, companies had zero incentive to move their factory to China, because why would they do that? They're going to have to pay the same rate anyways. Might as well stay here in the United States. Anyways, free trade ended all of that. It took away the tariffs, and that's when the factories started moving out of this country. We've lost an insane amount of factories. Insane amount of factories. It's an insane number. We've lost thousands and thousands of factories over the years. And by doing so, we've lost millions of factory jobs, which all of them were fairly decent paying. A lot of those were middle class jobs. The jobs that were gone are not coming back. But I will say this, to be optimistic slightly. We are doing a hell of a lot better than we were back in 2008 when we were hemorrhaging 400,000 jobs a month. We are creating jobs, but we're not creating the middle class jobs that we need to be creating. One of the first things we can do is by taking free trade and tearing it to shreds and bringing back the tariffs. Another thing we could do is bring back Glass-Steagall. I won't get into that right now. I'll talk about that later when I'm going to talk about the Federal Reserve and banking. I'll tie the two together. Both are banks. A point I missed on manufacturing is that the U.S. was the largest importer of raw materials and the largest exporter of finished goods. It's the opposite now. We import the finished goods and export the raw materials. So we don't make anything. Anyways, I'm just about done here with this rant. Thanks for listening, and I will piece together a script and material for my rant on the Federal Reserve and banking.